Anybody in Hangout or just online?
Hangouts, both. Okay, so this is Attorney Mike Leline with the Circle of Legal Trust, introducing Seth Price. He's going to be speaking on the digital marketing update of 2016. Go for it, Seth.
Great. Thank you, guys. Good to see a lot of familiar faces, new faces. I'm Seth Price, David Bryson from my office. With Price Benowitz, Washington, D.C., Maryland, Virginia, as well as a newly launched digital agency, Blue Spark Digital. And excited to be here with you today. Michael asked me to sort of go over some of the current trends, topics, things that are going on, particularly that affect us playing the local game. So I am going to skip straight to what are we going to be talking about today. We have changes to paid, which for anybody who's playing the local game has been significant. I think some of it's still yet to be sussed out as far as what that means, but generally when Google's making changes, they're not good for us playing the local game. Talking about the 3-pack, just because that is where most of our efforts are these days. And then finally, David Breton's going to step in and talk about a case study of something we just dealt with the other day. Google has, we see the algorithm organically kind of sifting and settling, whereas in local, we see all sorts of changes that are abrupt. And as of the other day, had a small heart attack when we saw all of the local listings and reviews disappear for a number of our profiles. So figuring out what went on there so that when these crises do occur, that we're able to methodically go through, figure out what's going on, and get them back, which thankfully we were able to do. Okay, so as most of you I'm sure are aware, and I'm going to use the graphic representation, what we're dealing with is that we no longer have right-hand side ads. And while that may seem like not that big a deal, real estate-wise, for what we're fighting for, it has made a pretty significant difference. The idea of having 4 paid ads at the top pushing the map and the local 3-pack down leaves you so that you're really pretty much fighting for the first organic spot just to be seen on the first page of Google. And again, we spent all of our time here and talked to Michael and the Colt fans for years. We're fighting for that organic placement, but when playing the local game, it's just throwing that much more emphasis into it. I ask anybody who has thoughts or theories or questions as we go, please chime in, because this is interactive. It's that much more interesting. But we've had to double down on our local SEO, because if there is a 3-pack shown, a 3-pack down from the 7-pack a few months back, we're really struggling, because if you're not there, if you're number 4 in the 3-pack, it's not horseshoes and hand grenades. It's you're not there, and it's pretty painful. So we have been pretty aggressive and looking for people who are spamming in the 3-pack, trying to see if there's a way to pull somebody out. Working with MapMaker, things along those lines. Anything we can do to make sure that we have a fighting chance to be present, and looking at the different areas. Are there additional topics that we're able to get ourselves into this 3-pack, given that it's taking up this real estate? And if we're not there, again, we're fighting to get some visibility, but it's really an uphill battle. Okay, so the 3-pack. It is something that we spend a fair bit of time working on. Dan mentioned in his presentation the idea of reviews, and that's where a lot of this is coming back to. But the 3-pack has a number of different factors that is creating your chance at that valuable real estate. And that when we're looking at it, we're trying this combination of traditional SEO that people who are playing the national game are doing, and morphing that with what was Google Plus, Google My Business, the current iteration, this sort of moving target that Google has been playing with in local, figuring out what it actually takes to be there. So one of the things that we've done after we actually have the SEO in fairly decent shape is going back and taking a second look at Google My Business. Michael and a number of the other guys who are early adapters spent a lot of time on Google Plus, and we were really hoping that this was the next big thing and this was going to be a player with Twitter and Facebook, and it just didn't come to be. And Google has given every indication that the actual Google Plus social component is not going to be a factor, but the Google My Business, the local component, is more important than ever. Now, again, whether or not there's a tie-in to any activity you have on the old Google Plus platform, the smart money is saying no, whether or not that's right or not. Everything that we're reading is that every time Google tells you something, don't believe it. At the same time, sometimes, like even a clock that's broken is going to be right twice. And whether or not this is time to put those social efforts somewhere else to get those both, I guess, the traffic as well as the links coming from another place, since Google has not been giving us the love. However, here it's everything. So making sure profiles are fully claimed, and making sure that the 3-pack is a center of everybody who's playing the local game's attention. Again, it's more clear graphically than ever that what we're playing for is very thin real estate organically, and that the 3-pack becomes more and more important. So for some of you guys here, this is going to be, of course, but the worst part is, I can speak for myself. I go off to these local universities, speak to the experts who do this stuff day in and day out, and I'm sitting in these advanced classes, then I come home and say, shit, my own stuff isn't perfect. And so it's one of those things that it is amazing how often we take for granted the stuff that's right beneath our nose, rather than going out and looking, can we get that amazing link to come to us to help us? Making sure that your NAP is clean and pure is a huge thing. Okay, registering your business with Google. Everybody's like, yeah, of course. Well, the number of times we see people that have 4, 5, 6 offices, where maybe the first couple are registered, but they have their 4th or 5th office that has not been claimed in Google, it's shocking. So as we've started an agency and we're sort of looking at other people's sites, we're like, wow, this is just unbelievable. The number of people that have multiple offices and have not even taken that very first step. So number 2, okay, if this is not part of your vernacular and you're playing the local game, it's got to be name, address, and phone number. It's got to be clean and it's got to be pure. We ourselves have moved offices, and in doing so, the good news is that what used to be a huge ordeal, for years we would go and have to keep a lease or a mailbox at an old address just to make sure that we didn't lose our NAP. That the good news is that's not necessary today. That you can actually, within a limited radius, move your office, and Google does a pretty good job of moving everything with you if you're keeping your name and your phone number. However, the downside is that you now have all of your old stuff out there. Now, if you're using the major data centers and you're allowing them to repopulate, that's going to do a fairly large percentage of what you need, but it's not perfect. And so you do a lot of automated stuff, sending stuff to the major data centers, but something that we sort of came to the realization of is, we've made a couple moves over the years, and we should make sure that that old stuff is gone. How much of a difference does it make? Unclear. The major data centers are the lion's share of what's important. And if you don't have that clean, the 3 major data centers, you're really in trouble. But assuming that you have those done, the stuff that we're going back is going step by step, Googling the old address, what with our name, what comes up, and then one by one, taking the time to clean that up. It's a laborious process, but we're seeing positive results as we make it that much more clear and non-confusing to Google. Yes.
3 major data centers are what, Seth?
Right.
Axiom, New Star Localese, and that's the last one. Factual. Thank you.
Right. And so there are different methods of using it. The reason I'm not even that familiar, they keep changing names, is that we generally use Moz Local. Yext is another option, but we've for whatever good or bad, we went with Moz Local and have had pretty good success with it. But the point is that once you've done that first step of submitting with it, the game's not over. I mean, it's better than doing nothing. You have to do that. And Moz Local is so reasonable for what it is that there's no reason not to use that, at least as a baseline. And I don't know if there's anybody who loves Yext that thinks that's the be all and end all. You're a Yext guy. But we've taken the attitude, just sort of like there are people who believe in drip campaigns. Our philosophy has always been, we call people back. We keep calling them back. We're not going to send them spam email. Our job is to, if somebody has an auto accident, if If they're in a cruise line situation, they have something, we want a real person to call them until they want it. And my attitude has been, if we want to get a NAP right, we can use technology, and there's nothing wrong with it. And the biggest players, the major hotel chains, all use Yext, and it's clearly a legit great place to go. But at the same time, there's nothing better than if you have trusted people to one by one get it right. Because if it's done right, there are also additional benefits to a hand-created NAP over something that's automated. And then if, in a perfect world, again, this is unlikely to happen, but going back and for the major touch places, Yellow Pages and different places like that, if you're able to go and adjust those on a periodic basis by hand and get that page refreshed and get that NAP looked at by Google, all the better. Cool. Okay, and then the last piece, which is, making sure that your SEO is strong. Are you able to get, it's great if you have a clean NAP. Google knows you're there, and the whole point is not to confuse Google. Let them know this is where you are, this is your name, this is your phone number. There's no possibility that Google's going to get confused. Great, and especially if you haven't moved or it's a new firm creation, and you haven't, you're using a dedicated phone number. All great, but none of that means anything unless you have the SEO juice coming in, and that the local work you're doing combined with that strong SEO comes together to create that shot at the 3-pack. Okay, and then next piece, which is optimizing the Google My Business page. It's not enough just to basically claim it and put name, name, address, and phone number, but making sure if there's something that Google wants that has for you to fill it out. Take advantage of the bells and whistles. We're playing around. We've done this historically. We're giving it another shot. There, you have the option of doing a walkthrough of your office. There are verified vendors out there that you can call who will come to your office and take these 360 shots one at a time that go all the way from the street, connect with Google Street View through your entrance door, through your lobby, into your office. And if you have nice offices, it's great to show them off. If you don't, I wouldn't recommend this. But even if you don't, maybe it's just the lobby of your building. The building is really nice, but your office is not. Get it in, get that extra real estate. So when you have your Google My Business page, you're giving a more robust feel and you have more stuff. I equated, for those of you old enough, the Seinfeld episode with the big salad, lots of stuff in it. Like the more stuff you have there and bells and whistles, and this is one they give you, if you have another opportunity to put, allowing video, whatever it is, making sure that you take advantage of any touch point that Google is giving you.
What should that type of service cost?
Anywhere from $200 to $500.
Yeah, I think I paid $400
That
in
sounds
Southern
like an
California.
awesome thing to use.
I thought it was going to cost an arm and a leg, and the guy showed up 2 hours, and I got 200 pictures and a bunch of videos. It was best money ever spent.
First phone call.
Yeah, I was following the
Sounds like
Yeah.
a great thing.
I mean,
Make sure
no brainer of all time.
Google, make sure that you're under Google.
Right, so you go through Google, you don't just random guy, there's a list through Google you can get. And it's, you got people in your local area, and it's pretty dubious. The guys come and go. If you get a guy, strike while iron's hot, because they then fall off and their band takes off and they're out of the business. But if you're able to get a guy to come, they're not super sharp business people, because to me, it's not a great business model in that you have to wait for somebody, and while we know, so they get you're like, yes, come tomorrow. A lot of people hem and haw, they're not necessarily making a ton. So if you call and say, yes, come now, I found that to be the best way to get them out quick. If you strike while iron's hot, just show up.
And
Don't mess around, just say,
Just-
come over. We'll do it the
Right,
way
because
you-
you'll get 4 or 5 different choices. 1 or 2 may return your call.
when I did it in LA, I typed it up, and they had 14 people listed as certified Google photographers. And then a couple of them had yellow stars and red stars, meaning that they even had higher recognition through Google. And it's real simple. You just
Where do you actually go on to find the Google My Business page, to find the list?
Just Google.
Just
Just
Google it.
Google it.
Just
and look
Google
them
it.
up.
It came right up.
Google it certified what?
Photographer.
Photographer, Google.
And the last, as Dana talked about, and Michael's been talking about, is reviews. We're seeing it during intakes. It's clearly a major factor as far as so in one sense, you want to be able to get people to the site, and if you're showing up in the 3-pack, I can't speak to whether or not the reviews themselves actually put you into the 3-pack. it appears that it's heading in that direction. You see them almost intentionally throwing some people without reviews on just to balance it out in certain markets, but it looks like it's the direction they're heading, and they're trying to signal that that's where they want you going.
Once you get 5 reviews on the page.
Correct.
You need to get 5 minimum.
5 minimum gives you stars.
Yep.
It'll show less than 5. It just
Right.
gives you the beautiful stars. So
It might just-
no, and look, you said you laughed, but for a while we were able to get those stars in the organic. I mean, it's a conversion factor. So if you get 5,
The other thing I was
You
gonna
have
say
them
is
in some organic.
on the 5,
right?
we've seen, you may have seen this too, Seth. You get 5-star reviews, and your average score is a 4.8. That's typical. So I don't know, like 6-7 reviews before you finally get the complete.
I see
average.
I've also just seen them just messing with you and giving you 4,
Yeah.
4.9. Just
So
for,
I mean, I think that's just part of it. So 5s for sure, but 7 or 8.
right, again, everybody has different
5.
philosophy. Like Michael likes some bad reviews, making it seem more genuine. We fight pretty hard. I mean, there are 2 different types of bad reviews. There's like, I thought the result was good, but maybe it took longer than I wanted. You got 4 stars, great. Yes, that's a good legitimizer. But when you have the real scorched earth ones,
Yeah.
My attitude is you get on the phone personally, you don't outsource it. You speak to somebody, you figure out what it is. If you're on a fee for services side, it's like, how do I make you happy? Because it's that important of a trust factor. As many of you may have read a few years back, the New York Times did an expose about an eyeglass store in New York that had figured out that reviews were everything. But what they were doing is they were awful. It was like they were ripping people off, terrible customer service, and so they had like 500 1-star reviews, but they were top of the search engines. Now, there's that corollary, which is an article in the New York Times immediately shuts you down, as a number of the department stores have learned over the years. Like, once the New York Times does an expose on you, it's a bad thing. Like, I think everybody here should really, if the New York Times is calling to do an article about your firm, you just like get the next slow boat to Cuba and figure out something else to do with your life, because they can flip a switch and you're done. But that being said, because of that, I think Google was moving towards not rewarding bad reviews. Not that anybody here is going to have a lot of them, but it's not only a negative conversion, but at some point, I think that Google will be looking at those as factors for how they show you. Right now, we're seeing anecdotal information that it's helping with the 3-pack. I can't imagine that it won't be in the future if it hasn't already been, but I haven't seen any case studies on it.
I don't know whether it helps. I doubt that it helps you in the 3-pack, the reviews. I suspect the reason why the people are in the 3-pack have good reviews is the reason they got in the 3-pack because they were good at what they were doing, good at marketing. So it's not necessarily I don't think there's but you know what I mean? I don't think that.
Look, yes, that's why I'm agreeing. No, which is why sort of when Matt is sort of shaking his head that it's there. Which one is it? I couldn't tell you right now.
It's the most important thing you could possibly do is get reviews.
I can tell you the difference it makes when you have yours come up against 2 other people that have none, and you've got 20, 30 stars reviews. I mean, everybody's going to go to you and not the others.
It's usually important, but
Right.
Hey, Julia, what does everyone say when they call our office? With?
Gotcha.
We get the same thing.
Right. So,
that way there's an extra seat for people.
cool. So again, we have our, again, number of citations. I think we're a little maniacal and go a little bit crazy. I'm starting to feel like the number of citations, it means less, sort of like links, that you need to make sure your major authoritative places are there. I for a long time was really trying to find, part of how I originally got into SEO is I had a self-storage place in Baltimore and basically built naps for myself before I knew what a nap was. Just anywhere I would stay up at night and just find places and throw in a name, address, and phone number with a link. And, again, a lot of stuff worked years ago that doesn't work now, but the bottom line is some of those sort of like old school tendencies of, more is better. I don't think it hurts you. At the same time, we're seeing that, because one of the reasons when we started doing our nap cleanups to find some of the offices that moved, truthfully, despite the fact that I love the stuff, I travel and learn as much as I can about it, we actually had a number of bad naps out there, not on major places, but on sort of secondary, third tier directories, did not seem to affect us negatively. One of my thoughts is, and we're sort of untested, but we're sort of thinking, is that Google is now giving you time from the time you move. Again, the world has changed. You can move without too much fear that you're going to have any problems. We've successfully made moves scared out of our wits, but you've been able to make that move, and that by doing, whether it's the Exeter or Moz Local, you've been able to get the major authorities to switch. We found that we actually had a number of bad naps out there pretty far down the line. We're going back and cleaning them up. It hasn't hurt us tremendously. At the same time, we're all in competitive spaces and want to make sure that we're not doing anything that holds us back unnecessarily, especially something that can be done by relatively inexpensive labor. Cool. Things that I guess I'm going a little bit off the slide, but for people here who are in shared office suites, things that sound obvious, just want to make sure everybody here remembers, one thing that we do when we sign a lease, because we have a lot of satellite offices, when we sign a lease, we make sure that we have a specified suite number that's different than everybody else's. Again, number of people, legitimate large firms that we've seen, where they have an accounting firm in the same building, and it's one address for the building, again, that's death. If you happen to have a satellite office that is in a shared space, which Google said they didn't want us doing, but really has seemed to have backed off. They really don't seem to have penalized the shared office spaces the way that they said they were going to. But the key is, how do you differentiate yourself? If you have the same NAP, that's going to be a problem. I don't know if anybody else can speak to that. I'm curious. For years, everybody professed don't use shared office spaces. We don't use them, but I'm seeing them work in a way that, again, Google tells you not to do something, yet I think they're sort of cognizant of the fact that for startups, for small businesses, a lot of people, that's where you start. And if they were to not let you do that, that would be problematic. Is anybody in their market, any competitors getting away with Regises or other shared spaces?
Philadelphia, 11, they have 2 suites. They're both at the top locally. 2 different suite numbers, same address. A lot of the bigger cities, that's a big geographic location. They're doing it.
Right, so you're seeing it
Yeah.
successful despite the fact we were told not to.
Yeah.
It is working.
So I'm agreeing with you.
Right. It's just, I still, if you have the resources, don't do it. But it seems that if you don't and you want to open an office somewhere, that at least for the moment, Google is allowing the shared office. They're not doing what they did early on, which was literally not allowing the shared office spaces into what was then 7-pack. They seem to be allowing you to play with that.
I don't know if you're going to get to this, but could you talk a little bit about, either on mobile, more so, what's Google serving up in terms of location? In other words, the radius. My competitors, they have 9 different offices. And so you drive somewhere, and even when I search, and it says, we're giving you the closest attorneys within 4 miles. How important is
Well, the good news is they're now, I think, allowing, and if you follow Mike Blumenthal, is one of the thought leaders in the space, he always uses this upstate New York jeweler. And I think that it's a balance. If you become an authority with great reviews and great SEO, that and a great NAP, that you're able to compete even outside your geo for somebody searching there, that they'll bring you into that. And we see that, for instance, on our criminal, which is particularly strong. We'll see sometimes one of our offices that's not in the immediate geo being pulled into the search, like a straight search. I think what you're also referring to is that people are using mobile and they're driving around, then you're kind of screwed, because they're going to show a geographic radius that's much smaller because they're trying to give useful results. And that, that's where one of the advantages of having a multi-office setup. It's very expensive and time consuming, but I think there's an advantage particularly on mobile. The desktop delivery of, if somebody's doing Cincinnati, I think having one you put all your effort into is not just sort of like websites. At one point, people were playing the microsite strategy. Now people are much more reluctant to do that and put all their effort into one solid FU site. So that I think I almost look at it that way for you, that if you have limited resources, focusing on one thing and doing it really well, assuming that it has a population center to support you versus spreading yourself thin. There's somebody who's coming over the next day or two who's done a great job in California building out local presence. And I think one of the things he's been successful at has been, scaling that local perception for Google, and that he's done a nice job with it. But if you are a solo and you're not putting other people on your website and it's it's a risky proposition, I think, to start spreading it too thin versus a larger firm that has multiple. It there sort of has that feel of a larger facility. That Google's looking for the user experience, and what I call from law school passing the laugh test. If you can pass the laugh test, that's great. But if you can't, having a single centered office strategy is not a terrible one.
Seth, one of the things that I found I'm about 20 miles north of Cincinnati, the downtown Cincinnati
Right.
center. And at various times, and I don't know if this has changed, if you search for Cincinnati personal injury attorney versus personal injury attorney, where they're just taking your IP address
Right.
for your location, sometimes I would, and I can't remember how it was, and I think it's changed back and forth, I would be in the 3-pack for one of those searches, or I wouldn't be for the others. What I ended up doing is actually, like you said, opening a specific office. It's my own, with a specific suite number, downtown. It's still affiliated with my website, my base website. And I thought that things started to pick back up when they had that big outward change with the 3-pack and all that stuff. So
No, that's great. And I think that what I've seen is they are playing around with it. That's what I'm saying. The SEO, while we haven't seen any major changes over the last months, they're still in major flux trying to figure out local. And they lost Google Plus. And how often does Google lose on something? And so they're sort of licking their wounds and at the same time trying to figure out how to put relevant search results in. I think at one point they were being very strict on the geo, which is probably hurting you. It had to be how far you're from the city center, and that was what Blumenthal was talking about for a long time. That does not seem to be as much of a factor if you are an authoritative place. If your SEO is there and you're winning your NAP or the other piece of local, but that combination seems to work well enough that you can fight and win. Today, I don't think you could have there was a period when they first started this that you wouldn't have won with that.
Yeah, so we're in an unincorporated area of Sacramento called Mather. So it's this neighborhood, but it's got its own zip code. And so how does that present a challenge for us?
It's interesting. We saw something in Richmond where there are two there's the city of Richmond and there's Henrico, and technically you could send mail with with the same zip code to either. And so we've struggled with it. I don't have a perfect answer. If anybody here has had a great success, my feeling is if you're able to, and let's say it's really Sacramento, but you have this unincorporated area, if you're able to mail to Sacramento with that zip code and it gets there, if hypothetically, we've seen that work better than the name that less people would be searching for. You're still going to get the people for the geo because of the zip code, but if it is interchangeable, that using the larger name, and again, this happens in rare situations, but the suburbs of Richmond, we've seen this where Henrico is the money suburb, but people are searching for Richmond. And so you have to sort of weigh that back and forth. If you can make enough money, and there's enough search volume with the name of your city, great. But if not, you sort of an Anthony situation where you're like, well, you could either leave it there or move it, do both. But we've sort of, if I could wave a magic wand and clean everything up we have, I would go with the name, population, area, and then just with the correct zip code if that will actually work within MapMaker.
What about the idea of someone having the same name as you, like Tony's name, kind of a unique name, but another guy with your exact name? I have a guy is a judge, he's an attorney, he looks sort of like me, and he's in West Virginia, and he's the same middle initial as I don't have a unique name.
One of the things we've liked to do is creating the NAP with something that's unique. So rather than just your name, there could be another person with your name, even with your middle initial, having injury lawyers or defense attorney. You don't want to get too spammy. Again, another topic for another day. It's a whole other conversation about how spammy you want to get. There are people like in Philadelphia, I don't know if you've seen this, Philadelphia criminal lawyer, somebody went and actually branded it, launched it to Russian Kid.
They have slip and fall guys, so they changed the terms of service within the last year. It used to be where you couldn't add the string of the phrase onto your brand, but now you can. They took that out.
Or it's
situation.
Right, and it's really dubious. People going to branding that name. For a while, they were allowing one term modifier. I still think it's a risky proposition. It works and people are crushing it with that. How long that's going to last, again, there's definitely risk factor to doing it that way, but it works. But that's now your question is, I would add some modifier to it, even if it's attorney. Very often, because we have so many attorneys in our office. We're a 30-lawyer firm, and our belief, which Google's allowed, is that every lawyer is entitled to their own website. We have taken the attitude that we've been very clean for the most part. It had like attorney at law, but the odds of there being somebody with your name, attorney at law, for example, is negligible.
Should I go kill him?
No. You just have a unique knack. So, if it's outside your geo, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't.
Yeah. So then, who cares? I mean, for that purpose.
Right.
I mean, it may bother you for other things. For SEO, it can bother you. Like, there's a guy who's like a world famous like artist, and his name is Seth Price, and I get invited to all sorts of like galas and speaking engagements, and I basically scribble on a paper. So, if it's somebody who's sort of competing with you in one sense, the fact that the name is out there doesn't hurt you. Locally is what I'm focused on here. And if they're not in your geo, it's a non-factor for this purpose. But the flip side is if you're like the Smith law firm, and there's another Smith law firm that's using something pretty similar, that can be problematic. And it's enough that you may, if it's not hurting you and you're getting great results, great. But there are times when I recommend to people, make sure you get a name that's unique, that's not the same. A lot of times people lose a partner, things like that. That's where this stuff gets messy and complicated. I'm sure Dan's over the years seen tons of partnerships come and go, and situations where you now are left with a hot mess, and it's not easy, and it's a lot of labor to do this right. Right. There's to the point where there are times when I almost recommend new name, new suite number, and new phone number, and just completely, abandon where you are if it's different enough. If it's the fourth name that disappears, that's it's less of it, but that's where you end up with you really need, and I don't recommend going overseas with this. We've had no success with that. We do it. I don't know if you speak differently. I know you've had some success overseas. We do this all domestically with people who painstakingly go and change each NAP to match whatever it is, because there's so few things that can get you to the 3-pack, and this is one of those that can keep you out if it's not right.
You have to do it locally. You have to do it locally. Anything that requires English language or any creativity, you can't send that overseas.
Right. And when you say creativity, it's the fact that it's not right, and it's problem solving. You need somebody to change something. There's no set of rules. There's not like a switch that you flip that everything does. You have to figure out, is there a place on this site that you can actually email them, you can pick up the phone, whatever it is, but you need that thing changed. And it's I can't imagine that part of it's just getting the person to respond, and if they get somebody from overseas, they may just ignore it.
Discuss the correlation between search, natural search, ranking well for that, and ranking well in the 3-pack. What's the difference between getting to the top of the 3-pack and getting to the top of the natural search?
The easiest way to describe it, it's two different, it's a new algorithm that includes natural search or SEO or whatever you want to call it in that algorithm. So that Google has created something that's determining what's in the 3-pack. One of the factors is your normal SEO. So that's why when you see somebody who's number one for organic, there's a pretty good chance they're going to be playing well in the 3-pack. Not perfect. And one of the ways you used to be able to tell, and I don't think this still works, was AOL. They would show you the Google search results that were pure. And if you could then tell how you were being affected, and you could then correlate that with the strength for your 3-pack or then 7-pack. That was an old trick that you could use, which was using something that was outside the normal Google environment. And so right now the answer is do the best you can on SEO, which is good anyway, because stuff where the 3-pack doesn't show it's important. It's important for everything, right? But it is certainly one of the major factors, although not the only factor, that goes into the second, whatever you want to call it, algorithm that determines whether or not you're in the 3-pack.
Do you think the 3-pack is more linked, based, in other words, more dependent on the total amount of links that you have? I don't have any data, but I just sort of noticed that people in the 3-pack tend to be people that have more links in general. I don't know if there's any. It's just what I've noticed.
Well, I think two things. So links or NAP or citations. Citations, again, I think you even said before, I don't know whether it's causation or correlation, but you essentially have a situation where people who are focusing on their presence online or who get great press with lots of links coming in, they're going to be very strong, and they're curating it. There's good customer service. There's good customer service as far as PR and other things. All those links come in are a signal to Google that this is somebody who's strong and authoritative. So it shouldn't be surprising that they're showing those towards the top. So, and given that that's a factor for it, if you have a lot of links, that means you're presumably, assuming they're not spammy bad links, you're doing something right. If you have a lot of different unique referring domains, that's a strong SEO signal, which then leads into that second formula for the 3-pack. So people with a lot of links very often have strong SEO, which means they have a high probability of being in 3-pack. That make sense?
Yes.
Yes. So again, examples of citations, and again, these are places where, despite the fact that you may use Yext or Moz Local, that these places, the more important ones, and again, when I say that, these are places that, if you're thinking about places where real people might actually go, as opposed to these sort of far-fetched directories where you're trying to get a NAP citation, that these places are worth, in my opinion, spending time by hand to make sure that everything is good. Okay, so reviews, again, talked about it in Dan's session. Areas that we've seen, and again, reiterating what's been said, is you're hearing what people call. Part of what's going on is that is what is allowing people to make a differentiation. If they have a choice of places, again, somebody who's calling who's been injured or they've been arrested or whatever it is that's happened to them in their lives, they're calling through search where it's not a referral. Why are they calling one person over another? Take yourself out of the legal sphere. When you are booking a trip and you're looking at a hotel, you're buying a product on Amazon, any of this stuff, anybody who has high scores or scores at all, you're buying a product and 7 people have used it and used it successfully, you're more likely to buy that on Amazon than you are otherwise. And I think the exact correlation is there. Whether or not today we're getting that exact bump, I think it's coming, and that the idea that you are getting those reviews from legit places goes a long way. Michael's been talking a lot. Michael, I don't know if you're talking about this in your session on Yelp on Saturday, yeah. But one of the things that I'll just quickly say, and I'm sure it's going to go in greater depth, is making sure. I mean, Yelp is one of those playgrounds where there's a vicious group of people out there. If you start messing around with their rules, they will take no mercy, and they will blog and do all sorts of terrible things, and really Yelp itself can come down on you. Making sure that they're coming from legitimate places. Michael and I were just talking before this, making sure that if you're asking somebody for a Yelp review, which although there's controversy as to whether it's even allowed by Yelp, I don't believe it's actually against their guidelines, but it seems to be a common perception that is against their guidelines.
It's how you ask.
It's correct, but the idea being that if somebody has no Yelp reviews and they do a Yelp review, it's going to get filtered. Yeah. And then you end up with filtered results, which again gives a bad user experience and not something that you want. So if you're going to use your gravitas and you're going to sort of encourage people to leave feedback in social media, somebody doing it with Yelp where they're not already on there is not something that's going to do you any good and marginally can hurt you.
Just really quick, I guess you mentioned Foursquare. Foursquare is specifically mentioned by Google as a very powerful ranking factor. And I don't know if anybody who actually is even popular their Foursquare accounts. So maybe something you want to do and get some Foursquare results as well.
I think it was one of those sort of flash in the pants startups that really.
I think Google likes it for some reason.
Right.
Why?
No, but meaning I think what we don't know is whether they still like it. Meaning they clearly liked it and it was there. Whether they have changed their algorithm to keep up with what people are doing. There was a point where Foursquare was everything. I don't know if you guys had the same thing, but I had friends who were using Foursquare incessantly, and then it just disappeared overnight. So again, my answer is go everywhere. Whether you not spend a ton of time on Foursquare, up to you. But definitely should not be. It should be one of the places that you have a correct NAP. And given that there is at least at one point great authority being given to it, a wrong NAP there is something that you don't want to see for yourself.
Do you think that you have one lawyer that sees 95 reviews, and others that everyone else has 5, 10, or 15? Do you think it may cause problems where the legitimacy of those reviews are questioned just by the pure amount of them, or people assume that those are not legitimate?
Well, I'll give you a personal example. There's a guy in our market. So we started taking reviews pretty seriously a couple of years ago, and really focusing on making sure that lawyers told people, look, if you're happy with my services, they give you a big hug. This is the hug that this is the social media or online version of a hug, and letting them know that that was important to us. That said, the idea that these reviews that you're getting, I would say that anything you can do within your circle, and again, a number of people are going to go into greater depth in this, it doesn't violate those groups' guidelines. Very important to making sure that it gives you want the dolman effect. You want people calling up and saying, I'm here because I saw the great review and I'm there. And if you effort in, effort out. So
You have no way advocating standard reviews.
No.
But
No,
the more reviews you get, giving most consumers too much credit. The average unsophisticated consumer is not looking at whether this is legit or not. You're seeing the amount of reviews, the stars, they're like,
couldn't agree more. So this guy on market, I think he got a ton of criminals. Very hard to get reviews because the whole reason they're coming to you is not to be online, right? The whole reason is to make this disappear so it never happened. When you're doing PI, it's great because you give them money. They get money, they want to tell everybody about it. So this guy had like over 100 in Montgomery County, over 100 reviews. Some of them were like in Chinese that were completely like we brought them to these leading experts, the Blumenthal type people of this world who are big with mapmakers. Said this is clearly a fraudulent review. Buried, there were 6 fraudulent reviews buried at the bottom of their 100 reviews. Again, I didn't go. What they were doing was they were crossing over their criminal and their family law. So they're getting family law reviews to make it look like their criminal profile had a gazillion reviews, double or triple anybody else in the market. And part of the frustration is Google really doesn't seem to care about it.
Yeah.
Right, and we've also, over time, when we were doing them legitimately, there was a point for criminal, for example, that Google was allowing anonymous reviews, right? That pretty much got wiped away, and most of those reviews have gone by the wayside. So one of the things we do is we sort of make sure that we know where all the reviews are, because that one of the least stable areas, and what Dave Bren's going to talk about is a scare we just had this week, has been that Google, there are no rules. They do whatever the hell they want. And so we just want to make sure that if stuff disappears, and these are hard-fought cases, if we save people 20, 30 years in jail, we want to make sure that that can survive somebody at Google changing the algorithm that removes certain reviews. So the answer is numbers matter, but we're trying to play it as clean and safe as we can. And, the idea of, getting sort of paid or unauthentic reviews just seems being penny-wise and pound-foolish at this point.
Another thing you might want to consider when you're talking about reviews is putting them on your own site and marketing.
Absolutely. That's. I'm sure you're going to be talking about that in your session.
I wasn't going to talk about
okay.
that,
But
but
yes. Yeah, couldn't agree more. Awesome point. Well, I'm going to let David Brenton come up because I was fortunate enough not to be in the office when this happened. It was just getting the play-by-play remotely. But this was something that just happened. But I think it gave us some insight into the flux that we're seeing with local, and that Google really is. If stuff can be moving this quickly, it's pretty scary and shows that this is not a stable platform we're playing on, and that you got to be agile and ready to adjust. So, good.
Yeah, so did anyone else have this issue last week? It was Thursday and Friday. And essentially what happened was on certain profiles, there was no direct relationship to any of these profiles. They completely lost ranking. I think in actually the next slide, it shows what actually happened. But a long story short, we went from being #1 for multiple terms to that. And even that was for a brand search. So even when you were running a standard search for the keyword, where we were #1 before, completely gone. This profile in particular had like over 40 reviews on it, obviously built out. We had our Google photographer come in and do the office suite photo and everything else. And again, this is what kind of happened. So the first thing that we did was check the back end of Google My Business and just basically check and see if the reviews were even still there, because that was the main concern that we were having. And they weren't. They were completely gone from the Google My Business back end. The next thing I did was hit Mapmaker to see if any reviews or even the profile was still verified on Mapmaker. And there were a couple of things that I noticed. The first thing was that old profiles that we had merged in, so like historical addresses, anything like that we had merged into Google My Business profiles, the historic listing was now showing on Mapmaker. So we had our historic listing and our new listing both showing on Mapmaker, with only and both also showing in the Google search results if you search for the brand term. So that was obviously a huge problem. The reviews were also not showing on Mapmaker, and we really had no idea what to do. So again, after checking Google My Business, then hitting Mapmaker, I checked a bunch of forums, local search forum, there's a great one on Google+. No one was talking about it, and there was really no information out there about it. So I called Google.
Which is an amazing difference, because a couple years back, that didn't exist. There was nowhere to call, you're on your own. The fact that there are resources now is just remarkable.
Yep, so we called Google, and they connected us with India, essentially, and we asked them, what was going on. Because all of our reviews were gone. As a business owner, we were like, what the heck? Not only that, again, we had lost rankings on multiple profiles, multiple practice areas, and we were losing clicks and business by the minute. So they essentially said and confirmed that there was a glitch in Google My Business and that it should be fixed in 24 to 48 hours. Obviously, we were losing our placement for those 24 to 48 hours, and there was no guarantee that we were going to pop back in. So what we did was we actually went back into the Google My Business backend. We went into the map and actually edited where the marker was, just moved it slightly within the same building. And what that did was it prompted a refresh of the page, and within 15 or 20 minutes, everything was back. Reviews were back, organic rankings were back, and it was perfect. So I think this was a very isolated incident, and it was clearly a glitch, but you can still troubleshoot any Google My Business problems in a similar way. Again, it's a great question. But again, if you have one of the biggest issues that we've run into before is suite numbers. Suite numbers appearing before an address, so to say suite 12, XYZ address, and then city, state, zip. All of our local citations that we've spent all this time building had our suite number listed where we're supposed to be after the address. That's a big deal because clearly it wasn't, with that consistency purposes, it wasn't working. So again, if you check the Google My Business backend, it was still showing in that same way. Even when we tried to manually move it, it still wasn't popping over into the right place. Mapmaker is key. At the end of the day, we went over to Mapmaker and we made the adjustments in Mapmaker. It took 48 hours or so, but one of the Mapmaker moderators actually pushed that update through, and we were back to having the correct map. So I guess in the grand scheme of things, you can kind of troubleshoot Google My Business problems in a very similar way. Check your Google My Business backend, hit Mapmaker, run a bunch of searches, look for your old listings. I feel like that's a huge thing. If you can find your old listings on Mapmaker after you merge them in and Google said that they've been merged in, there's clearly a problem or a glitch that's going on. And if all else fails, call Google. There's a URL you can go to where you can literally have them call you. India, again, working with them is very difficult because they don't give you very much information and they really don't know what's going on.
What triggered you finding it?
Pardon?
What triggered you finding it?
Every morning we check.
Okay, so
It was like 9 a.m., 9:05.
Okay, so we were
First thing
just-
we do,
we were doing the morning check.
every morning we check everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
We really had a heart attack.
No, exactly. So all these guys are sitting there in their offices around, and you're sitting there. It's like, is this me? Did like my stuff get tied together? Am I done?
Yeah, that was actually a good point. That's the other thing that we checked was, are there any penalties? Do we have any notifications? Do we ever get an email from Google saying like, hey, you guys, we don't spam or anything, but there's something wrong with the profile that caused it to completely fall out? Because that's the only thing that, in my mind, could have triggered that plummet, or the penalty or something like that.
And if you could bottle that feeling.
Did you get it fixed?
Yeah.
No, it popped back.
By doing the Mapmaker?
Yep. Well, actually, by going into the Google My Business page, editing the address, and just moving the marker like half an inch, and then it just.
But that said, like the idea is that this is so in flux. That's what I'm taking from it. Even if you didn't do that, stuff came back eventually.
We had literally all of our clients dropped out, including that.
Really?
I don't know if I told you or not. But
When did they come back?
immediate, right after the Mapmaker move. So
What is
Did you do the same thing?
I did exactly
Did
that.
that.
I called Google
Another
They-
48 hours. But it came back, so there's no sweat.
That helps.
Right, and again, I think it's.
And I had the same issue. Yeah.
Right.
They're
so-
like, what's
It's
it's
Yeah, so it's that- but I think the bigger lesson is not this specific nonsense, but the idea that this is just they're spitting glue and figuring this out. That, they have a very sophisticated algorithm for search, just not for local.
I had the same thing you mentioned, all of the
Oh, so
older
to the
listings.
people on.
Like,
Yeah, you can do anything.
Older
Literally,
firm
it's
names
just
and things
purely
repopulated, so they
it's almost
still
like a
have that support.
Wikipedia of sorts.
I guess
Right.
just
just
based
feeding information and letting the general
Right.
public do it. It's moderated.
which is crazy too, but they would have that way back.
It's the neighborhood that is virtual,
Yep, essentially, and you can literally make any changes that you want within that.
and it gives you more credibility when you make the changes to other people.
That said, just to be very careful, just like Yelp, very, very, I don't want to use too much of a pejorative, but like, don't mess around with this area. This is an area where you make your specific changes that are legit. You're not, it's not a place. You don't want to play around in this space. This is an area to completely white hat as white hat gets. You make your change where you absolutely need it and buy juice by doing things legitimately.
I mean, what I think messed with me is the Yelp thing. I asked, so well, give me a review, and I said, well, they use Yelp. They never used Yelp before.
Well, it just filters you. It's not the end of the world.
Filters me out. So
Right.
I like all my reviews are filtered
Well,
out.
right. So the key there, and I just shut this down for a second.
Tell them to go back.